Good morning, fellow gardeners. Okay, we're in the house now of cherry tomatoes. We're growing these tomatoes, what they call single stem, even though this is double stem, on a string. We're going to show you a little about how we're going to do this to grow these cherry tomatoes and make them accessible, easy to pick. So we have our containers. You can see under this cloth we have our self-wicking containers, just like we've been talking about every video. We have our soil in there. We have a drip tape running on top of the buckets and the containers, and then we put this ground cover over the top of it to keep all the weeds down. So we have no weeds growing, except on the ground maybe every now and then. But we're running a little trial test to see if it's more profitable to grow a single or double stem here versus doing 5 or 6 of the stems off of the same plant. Well, we can see already that there is a lot more blooms here than there is on the single stem. But the question I guess we're going to ask ourselves, can we put enough food into that soil to produce this many tomatoes? This plant here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 limbs coming up that we're putting a string on each limb. We're dividing these strings out. We got to put another string over and push some of them that away. But here it is. We've got 7 branches. Each branch has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 7 hands or clusters of blooms. Each one of these clusters, you can see, has anywhere from 20 to 30 tomatoes on each hand or cluster. And so what we're checking to see is if we can push enough fertilizer through there to grow these tomatoes. And we know there are going to be a lot more tomatoes here to pick than there will be on the 2 stems over here. But I wanted to kind of show you a little bit how we do these to train them like we want them. You can see I planted a tomato plant down here. I've got to take all of these clusters off down here. These suckers that's coming up. Here's your cluster, first cluster of tomatoes. All these other stems we'll take off and just leave these 2. And I might come back and tie this one up later to have 3 if I decide I want to do it. But to make these 2, what we do, we take these, you notice at a leaf node, every leaf node will have a sucker come on. See that right above that leaf node right there? We're going to take that sucker off. And this is a leaf over here, and here's your sucker right above it. We're going to take that off. And that way, we come in here once a week, and we wrap that string around it one more time. In a week, it'll grow up about this far, and we'll wrap it again. This takes a lot of labor and time. This is what I do every morning, is take these suckers off and wind these strings. It's a good way to grow them because you've got your tomatoes out here where you can get to them. And we'll take more video later as they get ripe. Here's one right here. Now, let's just show you. This one here, it's been a week since I've been on this plant here. You can see it's grown about 1 foot more in a week. And it's also put on 2 more hands of tomatoes. So we wrap this string around this plant like this, come up here and try to wrap it under each hand of tomatoes, what we do. Now we go back and we've got a sucker right there we need to take off, and that's got that one fixed for another week. Here's another one right over here. You can see this one's grown about 18 inches. We got to de-sucker that one right there, take that stem off, and it hurts me to take that off because that would make more fruit right there. You see that bloom coming on. But we can get too many on here and get too crowded. So now I'm going to wrap this string around this, under that hand of tomatoes, up around this one right here, and back around. And my work is finished on that stem for another week. I got to take my suckers off. There's the 2 suckers right above the leaves. And we'll leave that growing now for another week. And we'll see how far it is then. But you can see, here's one right here. Yes.
Can these suckers that you're pulling off, can they be repotted?
Yes. Okay, we just take this and we'll take you up front and show you in a little bit. We're going to take this plant like this. We take these leaves off. All you want is the top of this sucker, and then we're going to snap it off about that long right there. And we take these excess leaves. All you want is just a little bit of leaf growth on there. We put this in a little jar of water, little water bottle is what we put them in, and we let them stay about a week to 10 days, and we'll show you what they look like in just a little bit when we get towards the other end of the house. But yeah, all of these suckers can be put in water and make you another plant to grow tomatoes on. That was a good question, Jack. Okay, here's one right here. See, we haven't touched that, and I'm going to show you one more time. We come in here. Now, we can take some of these leaves off and not have so much foliage in here. Let me take this leaf off. We're going to get right in here. Now, you see this thing? It put on these suckers, so I got to take my suckers off. There's one right there I can take off. Well, I'm not going to snap. It's kind of cool today, and there's one that snapped off just like into that. And you can take them off, snap them off, or you can cut them off, either one. And then we take our string. Now, here's another sucker up here we got to get off. Remember, there's one comes on at every leaf node. There's a sucker right there. Now we're going to wrap it. We wrap around, come around this stem, come on around it one more time under this hand of tomatoes. Go right around there one more time and come around. And you can see now we've got another hand of tomatoes coming on right here that next week we'll wrap around it. And then there'll be another one up here that we wrap too. Now, the question's asked sometime, what happens when this tomato gets all the way to the end of this string up here? Then we unhook this string and we're going to lay this plant and lean it to the north, or anyway to the left. Every plant will be leaned to the north, to the left, and we'll make this thing lean over and we'll tie it over here, and now it can run on up here to further. But anyway, it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. Gardeners enjoy working in their gardens, and this is a lot of fun right here.
Question.
Yes.
In moving the string, how far would a plant keep growing?
These plants, if I maintained them, kept them watered and fed, and it didn't get too hot. That's our problem here in southern Oklahoma. When a tomato plant gets to 94 degrees, it kind of quits setting fruit. So it'll drop those blooms and not set. People come in a lot of time in July and say, my tomatoes are blooming, but they won't set no blooms. Well, they drop off. It's too hot. And another thing will cause them blooms to drop is putting excessive nitrogen on this. So you want to kind of, that's something well to talk a little bit about. When you start these plants out, they're just a small plant, 6, 8, 10 inches tall. You plant them in this container. We have already pre-fertilized with a half a cup of Sustain and 1/4 of a cup of Sea Mineral in that container. Then we plant our plant. Then we water in with water. Now, for the first 3 or 4 weeks until we get a set of 1 or 2 hands of blooms on, we use a higher nitrogen like a 10-4-3, and we'll water. Every time we water, we'll put that in that water, 1 teaspoon per gallon, and put it on these plants. Now, after you get a 1 or 2 hands of these blooms, for instance, like, see, this would be your, actually this is your first hand of blooms right here on this one. There's your first hand there. There's your second hand. Time we get to here, we want to stop that nitrogen and put more superphosphate and potash, which is the next 2 numbers. You know, all fertilizer have like a 10-10-10 or a 20-20-20 or a 10-20-20. Well, we start off with a 10-4-3 till they get to second hand, and then we back off and we use like a 4-38-18 because we want the last 2 numbers to grow our tomatoes. We don't need the first number, which grows our foliage. So that's another little tidbit that you need to remember to do. It's a little bit of work to remember to do that, but it sure will make your tomatoes get bigger and be more tomatoes. Anyway, that's all for right now. And if you like this video, then subscribe, ring the bell, and we'll make you another video. Thank you.